Hello, everyone, and welcome to Breakup Bites. I'm Jennifer Donison, and this is Jennifer Barkin. And
Morning.
today we are going to speak about reunification therapy, why it's important, when it is something that you should do, and a little bit about what it is.
Okay, so the first thing that I'd like to say is that I really hope that none of our viewers ever need to go down this route, the route of reunification therapy. I'm going to explain what it is. Sometimes, sometimes parents behave pretty badly when it comes to dragging the children into their issues and their conflict. Um, Clearly, this affects children very negatively, but it also affects parents because what happens is when a parent or friends of the parent or relatives of one parent are telling the children terrible things about their other parent and really getting them to side with the other parent. Um, it affects the children in many ways. And it affects the parent because the parent who's, been spoken about so poorly, it can happen that their child will refuse to see them, will refuse to speak to them, will not respond to phone calls, texts. The worst scenarios, they won't even accept gifts from that other parent. So the child or children are shutting the parent out of their life. Now, sometimes what I've seen in my practice is the children are actually shutting the other parent out for very good reason. There may be some of this alienating behavior, but they may have witnessed um, that parent being abusive to the other parent, physical violence, that parent may have been abusive to them, right? So, what happens is just think about it. If somebody is criticizing you all the time and putting you down and maybe physically violent to you, you're not going to want to have anything to do with them either. So that's not alienation. But alienation is when a parent, again, is having their friends, their relatives, themselves speak disparagingly about the other parent to the children and swaying the children's views about their parent who may very well be a very loving, parent who wants to have a good relationship with their children. So, where reunification therapy fits in, um, commonly it's ordered by a court, um, and a reunification therapist is assigned to the family to help repair the relationship between the estranged child or children with the estranged parent. It's a difficult area of work, um, an emotional area of work, an expensive area of work. And really, it's something that I wish didn't have to happen, but it can be helpful or not helpful in certain situations. So, um, one of the big problems that I see is when it's court ordered, the parent who is the alienator, um, the alienating behaviors and being nasty about the other parent and poisoning the children is working to their favor because this is exactly what they want. They don't want the children to have a relationship with the other parent because they can't stand that other parent. And something that really is a roadblock is even if it's been court ordered, that parent is just going along with it to because they have to. It's not because they want to. And that makes it very hard for everybody involved. So, probably the toughest job for the reunification therapist is to get the buy in or to be able to change the alienating parent's perception of why reunification therapy is a good idea and why the children should have a relationship with their other parent, especially when in their minds this dynamic of the way things are is serving them so well in their mind.
You said everything so perfectly. I mean, I don't really even have anything to add to that except for that I really feel that when people are saying negative things to their children and people are, exposing them to information that they should not have been exposed to, I mean, most of the time, I don't think it's ill intended. I don't think that parents are trying to alienate. It's just because they're feeling so emotional themselves and they actually have this hatred for the other parent. So they're just bringing their children into their world and allowing them to not have that. That very appropriate boundary that needs to be put up where children should not know some of the information that's shared with them. So, what I really want to really just kind of put out there is that parents need to recognize how damaging it is to express their thoughts and feelings about the co-parent to their children. Because even though you may think, oh, good, my child doesn't want to see the other parent, it's a win for me, I get to spend time with them, it's just so damaging for the child. And the child is the one that suffers. And I believe as a parent, you love your child and you don't want your child to go through years and years of feeling such negativity and hate for someone who they're a part of. So it's really best to try and encourage your child to see the good in the other parent. And again, like you said, Jen, sometimes there's a lot of abuse that happens, and it's appropriate for the child to not see the other parent. But it's still something where the parent that has the child should not be saying all these negative things. Always try to help the child move forward, not keep them in this ball of hatred, because it's just so bad for the children.
Definitely good points from a child development standpoint. Um, let's go back to the children are part of both parents. So 50% one, 50% the other. So when you are insulting and saying horrible things about a parent to a child, that child is 50% that parent. So you're actually putting your own child down. One thing that I like to tell people all the time, and a lot of people have heard this expression, love your kids more than you hate your ex, right? So a big part of the reunification therapy, as I said earlier, is getting the parents who this is working for on board on and to get the buy-in. How is this going to benefit you? Well, number one, you're going to have better adjusted children likely. Number two, um, your children aren't going to rebel in the same way. So hopefully. Um, what we know is, let's say, girls, and they feel that they didn't have a daddy around. Um, children gain different things from both of their parents, right? So that's when you start to see, the marks in school falling down and promiscuity and alcohol and drug use, substance abuse. And also, so you kind of say to these parents, like, is this what you want? Like, what do you want your child's life to look like? Right. So you want to do everything to, I guess, prevent all you can these awful things from happening to your kids. So, I will work with people and giving them some lines or statements on when the kids ask these very difficult questions about the other parent, because kids are pretty smart and aware. They know more than you think they do. Um, you know, Instead of, let's say, siding with, my father is this or my mother is this, that, whatever, instead of like cheering that on and saying, yeah, when we were together, he did X, Y, and Z. Um, have some answers for the kids, right? Maybe help them. How can you speak to this parent? But obviously, they're not speaking to this parent. But we all have different ways of seeing things. Maybe there's more that we don't know. We all have different perceptions instead of becoming that cheerleader and egging this conflict on, right? So that's one way to support the children. But I really think it's important that the parent that feels that they're benefiting from this estrangement have to really work with them to help them understand how this behavior is going to affect the kids and what you can do to make things better for your children so that you don't end up with children in years and years of therapy and messed up lives later down the road.
Mhm. And people aren't perfect. And, going through separation is very emotional. And sometimes you feel you are very wronged by whatever actions that your ex partner did. And, it happens where people slip up and say things, even to someone trusted, and the kids are in earshot. And even though we highly recommend not to do that and to be cautious and to try to stay clear of that, it does happen. So, reunification is helpful when there have been mistakes made and the children are holding resentment and hate for one parent because of things that have gone on. It's important to have that process of reunification so that they can get to a level of letting go of the hate and moving forward with their lives. So it is something that's very important if you are at that point.
One difficulty that I see quite frequently is the estranged parent. They're they're hurting, they're sad. So they want this fixed ASAP, right? But guess what? It's a long, slow process, right? Um, before in my practice, before I even speak and see and work with children, I work with the parents, right? Because I have to teach the alienating parent what I spoke with before, and I have to teach the estranged parent how to deal with the children when and if reunification does take place down the road. So, for example, you don't want to guilt a child, right? You don't want to say, after all I've done for you, and remember I did this and this and this. You want the conversations to be pleasant, you want them to be light. Um, I also spend a lot of time working with the estranged parent on if this is something that they really want, right? Um, how not to give up because consistency is key. So even if that child is ignoring your messages, returning your gifts, what you don't want to do is prove that child's narrative right. So you kind of want to mess it up a little bit. Get that child thinking, huh, if this person is such a monster and they don't give a you know what about me, then why are they always trying? It messes up the narrative. But, it's a long, slow process and very difficult for the estranged parent because they just want a band-aid slapped on this and they want this to happen very quickly.
Great points. Yes, trust is definitely built on consistency. So that's a great point. Um, we're both happy to guide anyone in the right direction if anyone has any questions about it or would like to be referred to someone. But it is hard work and it is sometimes very necessary work. And we hope that you don't need it, but if you do, it is definitely something to look into.
Definitely, I'd have to say of all the work that I do, it is probably the most difficult. The only point that I didn't bring up that I'd like to just mention before we say goodbye for the day is the parent that's estranged. A big part of the work with them is teaching them to have accountability. Nobody's perfect. But remember, if your child feels that you did A, B, and C, you can't just brush it off, or the whole reunification is going to be a bust. So you have to, like when you talk to anybody, right? You hurt my feelings. I can't just say, well, that's ridiculous. I can't brush that off. I have to say, I'm sorry to hear that. What did I do? And how can we move past this? What sort of changes do you need from me?
Mhm.
Another part that's very hard.
Yeah, great point. Well, thank
So,
you all for tuning in. And until next time, I'm Jennifer Donison.
and I'm Jennifer Barkin.